All right, welcome everyone. We're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we're here for Plastic Memories, episode 13, the finale. Mm-hmm.
Here we are.
So, this is it?
Yep. Yeah.
This is it.
I mean,
yep.
We knew this day would come.
Here we are.
Here we are.
Yep.
Yeah.
Tsukasa, my heart goes out to you. It's gonna be tough. Yep. And want to say goodbye
to Ira. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. But the memories shared,
those will remain. With you, not her.
Mm-hmm. Exactly.
So, but they did the goodbye going away party.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, last episode.
They had the going away party. They had a moment where Ira noticed that Michiru and Tsukasa were having a little bit of a bonding time with that, and Ira made the line of, "I hope that you get to be reunited with the person you cherish."
Mm-hmm.
So,
yeah, and Ira is still scared, even though there's all this awesome stuff happening that's making it easier.
Right.
There is no way this will be easy for either of them.
Yeah.
So
y'all, without further ado, let's get into this. All right, everyone, now be sure to go check out the reaction portion of the video in the description below, and then come back here for the discussion. All right, that's the finale. Plastic Memories, y'all. If you want to know what show we're going to be reacting to next after this, be sure to stick around to the end of the discussion. We'll announce that there. But oh my god, so
this was not the way I expected it to go, which I feel like has almost become a catchphrase for this show.
I think that this is the typical type of show where you know the ending is going to hit you in the feels, but you don't know what type of punches they'll throw. So in this case, I don't feel like we got punched at all. I feel like if anything, they literally gave us the most wholesome form of the ending we could get.
Right.
Which, is that sadder? Is that actually something where...
In a lot of ways it is.
In a lot of ways, wouldn't you say that actually one of the strongest aspects of it is you don't feel emotionally manipulated? It's a negative in terms of that I don't feel something. I don't feel emotionally manipulated.
It's not reducing you to the maximum point of, sobbing mess, whatever. And maybe it, did for a bunch of people. I'm guessing it probably did, but the idea that it wasn't overly dramatic,
because they did it. They actually made it through this. And I think that one of the things that makes it actually more emotional to talk about than to actually see is that when it's happening, there's almost this breath that's held within you as you're like, they're going to be okay. They're going to be okay. They're going to be okay. And then when you realize they're going to be okay, you get this feeling of relief rather than sadness, because it's okay, good. And then the beauty of having this, this cycle that she was on, and she was coming to the end of it, and she got to go into the Ferris wheel one more time, and she wanted to get off basically at the highest point, so to speak, of her dream that she was experiencing within this. I love it. And of course, Tsukasa is the one that, has to break down first. Right. Because he's been holding it back. Yeah, he has this whole time.
She's faced it and he hasn't, right? Because for her it was something that she knew she had to face for a long time, whereas for him, one, he didn't know that it was a thing for a long time, but also he didn't immediately care about Ira, in the same way that, she would say care about herself, right? She was a coworker, and then they got closer and closer, and then it's the whole thing of, oh yeah, well maybe I just won't think about that right now, for her sake, and also, oh, maybe I'm not fully admitting, but also for mine.
The idea that in the moment when he's realizing that this is basically it and it's over, he kind of starts to shut down. You realize that he's been doing kind of the unhealthy guy thing of stifling his emotions, which is not not something you want to do in this case,
No,
because she was
definitely
so
not.
grateful to see that he would cry for her.
Right.
And for her, like, think about that. There's obviously the connotation of, yeah, she's crying. I mean, he's crying for her because he's going to miss her. But there's the bit of that, if he's crying for her, you know, she doesn't have to necessarily.
Right.
She can somehow find a lot of comfort in that connection point.
Yeah.
So it's something where if he was unwilling to do that, he would have been...
It would have made it harder for her.
It would have made it way harder
Way
for
harder
her, because then she wouldn't have known that he would be okay.
Right, because the crying is it's showing that he's accepting
it,
right? Yeah. And that's the real point of this, you know.
Yeah.
I feel like in a lot of stories they'll approach this whole angle of having the, you know, okay, have the tragic death at the very end or whatever, as if the death is the most emotional thing.
Yeah.
But it's not.
No, it's not at all.
It's the coming to terms with the death when you know it's going to happen.
It's the fact that a relationship is ending.
Right,
here.
Exactly. And you know that it's ending, right? Yeah. You know that it's ending and you can't stop it. And what do you do about that?
Right. The cords that are connected between the two of them are going to be isolated now specifically to memories, not to the present anymore. Yeah. So that connection is severed. But when that happens, you have to acknowledge that it's painful. You have to acknowledge that it's something that you don't want. And if you're not willing to do that, you're gimping yourself. You're literally not able to process it. And then the other person gets worried and goes, well, like, that's literally what she was doing. She was like, think about your future. Like, your future's going to be great. Like, you're going to have all these things work out. And you can kind of tell that she's pushing him to accept it because he hasn't hasn't up until that point.
And in a lot of ways it's dishonoring, but then also tainting the memory of the person,
right? Because
if you don't accept it, then anytime that you think about them, you'll just think about the fact that they're gone, because you haven't reconciled that, right? And it's also not... Well, yeah, because you know, if you accept it, then they'll know that you're going to be okay. And if you don't do that, then
maybe it'll haunt you or in some way.
Right, and then that's something that they can be worried about, or, you know, when it's their time to go. And
one of the things that's I don't want to go too in depth into this. I really don't.
Okay.
Because I feel like this is something that could be taken the wrong way. But I find it actually rather interesting that the final conversation bit there was the, what do you love about me? Because, okay, I'm going to go a little bit in depth into this.
Right.
I think that question comes from a place of insecurity a lot of the time.
Sure. Yeah.
Not all the time, of course.
Like, not necessarily in this case, but
it's a fun game that I've done, like, in past with relationships, or just, you know, just people in general. Just the, hey, let's go back and forth affirming the other person.
Right.
That's a cool thing. Did you notice what type of affirmations he gave about her?
Yes.
She's weak. She's vulnerable. She's someone that he can kind of be there for without necessarily...
Right. And
loving her as a person,
well,
but just the fact that she's fragile.
And I'm not sure how much of that is the things he actually loved about her, or because of how he is at that moment. That's all he can see.
That's all he can see.
Right.
Yep, that was what I wanted to get into. Is that I think that if you were to look at this and not apply the context, you would actually see something rather creepy. And I wanted to bring that up.
Oh, okay.
Is that if you actually look at it in the context, you see that is literally all he can see in the moment here. He is seeing her dying, essentially.
Right.
He is seeing her falling over, stumbling. He is so absorbed in that his emotions are, like, just bubbling at the surface. He's trying to keep a boiling pot, like a lid on this boiling pot. And he needs to let it out. And she keeps, in some ways... kind of asking him through the conversation to open up,
to share that with her in their final moments together.
Because if they can't share that, then then what did we even have?
Right. Was it just keeping each other's company,
yeah,
for her final moments, or was it something more?
And that I think to me is the part that when I think back on it, that's the part that gets me the most emotional. Is that there might have even been, this is where I wanted to make sure I don't go too deep into it. There might have even been some doubt in his mind. Some doubt in his mind regarding why he loves her. Not something as if he actually didn't love her, but he totally does. But the idea that in that moment he was probably so emotionally compromised that who knows what was going on in his head. But these thoughts being the things that were being brought up probably were eating. It was piling on. It was eating away at him as he would bring that up. So I find that to be something rather interesting, and I'm sure there are people that have more kind of even broader contextual analysis for it, given what we've seen of his character in the show as a whole.
And upon rewatching and all that stuff, I'm sure there would all kinds of more clarity would come in and things like that.
Right, but in some ways, this is the kind of show. Well, because it's clearly over, I kind of want all y'all in the comments that are here in the discussion, please give me your feedback as the thoughts regarding this scene, because now I can just go into the comments and hear what your thoughts are regarding these specific things, because I really feel something is there, and I'm not necessarily getting at it, but it's there. So
yeah. The bit with them, this whole episode, right? Because the previous for a while now, I've been kind of waiting for the other shoe to drop with regards to when is the point where it gets not just sad, because the sadness is always there, but when it kind of relishes in the sadness, right?
And it didn't do that here.
And I kept expecting it to do it, and a little bit later, there's going to come that point where it's oh God, this is happening, and
you're lying April syndrome.
Get ready, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
But the way the characters handled it in their own different ways, right?
Yeah.
And because there's the way Ira handles it, right? And that's sort of the primary focus and everything, right?
Sure.
We've seen that over the course of the whole show, right? That's what she's been doing this entire time.
Yeah.
With Tsukasa, well, his is kind of the opposite, in that his whole thing was that he wasn't dealing with it, both before he knew and then after he knew. He was, trying to help her, but not dealing with it himself. And then with everyone else at the office, showing up super early, but hiding because they know that they're probably going to come in early, right?
And they also don't want to put that pressure on them.
Exactly.
They want them to come to that feeling and stuff naturally, without outside influence.
Right.
But Kazuki's gotta have her stay in that, because that's who she is. I do feel like now that all said and done, Kazuki and what they did with her character was rather special. The fact that she said that, I'm counting on you, Tsukasa. And then when it comes full circle and she's like, you did good, Tsukasa.
Oh yeah. Because you just know that in that moment when Tsukasa's looking at his shadow, even though he's brought this up with Ira before, even though he knows what the end of that road is, he's debating just, all right, let's just go, let's just disappear, right? Because it's not a logical thing at that point. It's just you're gonna go, and I can't let that happen, right? And the time's almost up,
right.
Yeah, it's almost midnight. What happens, when you turn into a pumpkin, right?
Yeah.
And that almost feels kind of.
No, but I get that. It's the fairy tale is over, and we have to move on.
Right.
And
and he wishes there was some sort of way he could, fairy godmother it and wave a magic wand and, buy one more day, right?
Yep.
But he can't.
Yeah. there were a lot of little callbacks, it seemed like, to previous episodes, but rather than kind of going into those, I kind of wanted to focus on the scene in the beginning. The beginning, by having the choice of the whole city is quiet, empty, no sound, no music.
Yeah.
And then we see them kind of sitting out on their deck and waiting for the sun to rise. What's something I kind of like about that is the idea, like, I don't think they slept at all.
Oh, I don't think so either.
I think they just kind of stayed out there with some coffee or some tea. Well, some tea.
Definitely tea.
Enough caffeine to keep them probably, awake. But
yeah, that
the point that the time they spent with each other was something that wasn't even solely for us to see.
Right.
The idea that this is the last day. They've stayed up all night.
Yep, because of course they would.
And all the stuff we get to see in some ways are the things that are evident to other people.
Right.
We had a little bit of them cleaning up, having a little bit of montage there. But there's this bit of kind of the couple dynamic when they're just enjoying each other's company, doing nothing.
Right.
And I think we had one or two other instances of that in the past regarding the show. But I don't think we had a scene quite like that.
Yeah, that
was I would say almost perfect. Like it was almost
like
the perfect kind of love couple scene where it's not about them saying daisuki desu, or anything like that. Right. Just enjoying each other's time. And
one of the things that and I think it's so perfect that they have that scene, because with this show, if I were to say the one thing that I would have liked to maybe have been different would be that the reason for them to fall in love initially maybe wasn't quite as strong as it could have been. However, and this is a big but here, the way that this show sells them being in that relationship with the moments like that where they're just sort of sitting wrapped up in a blanket watching the sunrise, drinking tea, that wipes away any concern I may have had of how deeply do these characters truly care about each other? Is there some part of Tsukasa where it's more of just the fact that he sees someone who's hurting and he's empathetic, right? But how deeply do the bonds really go? And then there's things like that, right? And it's just like, this is fantastic.
They chose on all the episodes leading up to this finale as well to keep things exceptionally positive and wholesome despite dealing with such heavy subject matter. And I think they actually dodged multiple cliches on the way to this finale. That I almost kind of want to go back and look a little bit to see how much they were foreshadowed, because I think a couple of them really were. One of them that's rather apparent here is in some ways, like you were saying, the violent nature of the ending, like it being a violent case of emotion. In some ways, it's actually a quiet, peaceful end where she just goes to sleep. There's no protest.
Right. They don't need to have the machine bed thing. Like that's what I thought it was going to be. And that Tsukasa was actually causing a problem of drawing it out and potentially getting into dangerous territory.
Right. Because of being a wanderer.
Right. Because they weren't near one of those pods or whatever.
Right.
And the rings being the devices for it. It's that's
right. Another thing that I actually really also appreciate as a cliche dodge was there was very, very little commentary from the peanut gallery side characters regarding this, except for the one scene where it tied perfectly together emotionally because they all ended up in this place together because they're we're worried about them. And that's it. That's it. Right. It was basically just Kazuki just having a little conversation.
It's
with her, talking about the tag, the name tag, the license.
And even with the whole thing of them all being there, that's an expression of their concern, but it's not I would say, an act of their concern because they kept themselves hidden, right? Like they were still doing something. They went to the office early,
right,
right?
but it wasn't communicated.
But exactly. So they were absolutely giving them space and everything like that. Yeah.
Yes, I think that that's something, if anything, that was my awkward thing about the show that I was never really certain about was regarding there being all these other characters. I didn't necessarily care
about all of them.
A good chunk of them. Like they were there,
right? A couple of them, I don't know if we even know their names.
I'm sure we know their names, but it's more like I don't really care about them that much. And the fact that the show, towards the end, when it really mattered, it didn't steal away from the time they ended up focusing on what was really important. And it led to, in some ways, some of the best scenes regarding the relationship, because they let the ending be about the relationship rather than about the death.
Exactly.
And that is another cliche dodge that I think anyone who's watched a lot of just because I haven't even watched that many, but watched like romance shows or romance anime in general, there's this aspect of the once the confession happens,
nothing else matters, or
once you essentially communicate and get through the melodrama, then there's not much plot left to go on, so you kill off the characters or you end the story. This one doesn't do that, and in fact has very little melodrama with regards to the actual main two characters here.
And that's over a lot of the course of the show. Here specifically, the only drama that there seemed to be was on the lack of drama, where it's like, come on, you gotta acknowledge that this is happening, that this is real,
that's the perfect conflict. That's the perfect conflict to end it on is, hey, we know the audience is already crying, but we need you to cry too.
Exactly.
That's in some ways so meta and brilliant that I almost couldn't cry because I was so happy.
Exactly.
With the way this was going.
Because the thing is that while what's happening is sad. Yeah. Right? We're also getting our happy ending. Because Ira was going to go regardless. The question is how was she going to go? How is everyone around her going to be able to deal with it, right? And we got it.
They deal with it.
Yeah, they deal with it. It was hard fought, right? It wasn't easy, but they did it. Right. So what more could we want? Well, the after credit sequence.
Yeah, in a lot of ways, what I really liked about these last few episodes, all the way back to even the Michiru amazing scene and stuff like that.
That was awesome.
Was they took steps to make sure that the one core aspect of the show was actually remembered.
Right, a boon rather than a curse. Right,
right. Because I'm sure that in some ways, this still is probably the main criticism of the show is that the pacing or the amount of show that they got was not enough or something like that. They wanted more time, But isn't that kind of hilariously
on
the nose, the idea that you wanted more time,
right? If only they had, because
I just love that.
The whole thing of if only it had started out with the two of them liking each other. That way, that's
the whole point. And then the end.
Not all shows can start with one person huffing the other's shirt, but
then we get the end credit scene, and I like that we did not get to see her face.
I think that's very important.
I think that it's very, very important. I love that everyone did get a letter as well. That was another cliche dodge, that it wasn't just specifically to the main character.
It wasn't,
though. It's who's hugging Chewbacca kind of thing. We didn't have that kind of a silly thing there.
But it's one of those things where, of course, everything that she needs to say to him, she would have made sure to have already said.
That's the journal.
Exactly. She wouldn't have saved the love confession for after she died or something like that. No. Yeah, because and I gotta say, I loved what they did with Michiru in the end credit scene, because since they established the whole notion of will they end up together once he's grieved Ira and all that stuff, showing the haircut
Mm-hmm.
and showing her taking care of the plants, I think,
and
were two
taking care
very
of the plants.
important things.
That was really big,
especially considering the fact that Ira, even though she's not going to be Ira, came back at the end, right? Because of course, she's a gift, yes, right? That shows a level of acceptance on Michiru's part, and also so that there is no remaining conflict left in the air of like, okay, well, if Tsukasa is trying to get to know this new Ira all over again, what happens to Michiru since she liked Tsukasa? And then there's that whole thing, right? Even though it's relying on knowledge of anime tropes, the cutting of the hair, right? So it's she's moved on, right? But she remembers, and she takes care of Ira's plants, right? So I just that was really good.
That was good. Yeah. I think that I think that in some ways the ending of this show still vastly outshines some of the beginning parts of the show.
Yeah, I would say the second half
is just clearly better than the first half.
And although I will make an exception for the very first episode because damn.
But I think that if I had any doubts about the show in general, they were all just completely
thoroughly wiped away
by the end of the episode, by the end of the show.
So now that the show's over, who's your favorite character?
Well, that's the thing. I still think it's a really tough mix up between Kazuki and Michiru.
Same.
But the thing is that
it's not a toss up anymore for me.
Yeah, I think in some ways one of the things that Kazuki didn't fully get as much as Michiru was kind of that big moment, And I think that's mostly because Michiru gets more screen time just in general, just a lot more. So in that respect, I think that Michiru was queen of character development over this show.
Well, and I feel
and yet in some ways also the main two characters are the ones that get the most character development.
Right.
It's more that we have a very complex character in Kazuki that, because of actually the lack of depth going into it, not lack of depth going into it, the lack of time exploring said depth, you kind of get to fill in a little bit more of the blanks yourself, so it leads to maybe a better image depending on just whether or not you liked Kazuki.
Sure.
But I would say that Michiru is it's tough.
Tough. So my hot take on it is that I feel like because Michiru was very sort of archetypal tsundere at the beginning, right?
Yeah.
Why does she like Tsukasa? Blah blah blah. All this. Well, she has the bright, colorful, long hair. So there you go. Right. That's how it is. With Kazuki, I feel like it was a lot more clear from the very beginning that there was more to her. Right. That she showed that other side of herself.
Right.
In the case of Michiru, because she was so archetypal, there was a hole that needed to be filled, right? There was a growth that needed to happen, and and in a lot of cases that's why her moment was able to be so powerful. I feel like because there was more time to anticipate it, and sort of hope that it happens, and then when it happened, it was something where she was embracing her archetypal nature of being a tsundere and owning it in an amazing way.
Yes.
Whereas in the case of Kazuki, it was something where she felt like a more realistic human being that had sort of like a
just
shit to deal with and a slight sort of trope that she also had of being the one that would always put Tsukasa in the headlock, right? But there wasn't as much growth that needed to happen on her part, I feel like.
No, not as much growth.
It was definitely still there, and it happened.
Anything for her, it was an act of selflessness in that she needed to pass the torch to Tsukasa and basically be okay with him being the one that would protect her and take care of her, of Ira. And because of that protectiveness, I identify and relate a lot more to Kazuki, and I don't really have a tsundere like
I do
thing. I don't really go for the tsundere kind of characters in terms of my for certain archetypes. I generally like the Genki girls who are like way more like in terms of archetypes, like the ones that are way more enthusiastically passionate about a specific thing, but
the
don't
equivalent
like,
in this show would probably be Zack is the closest.
No, there's no. I would say Kazuki is actually the closest. There's no real.
Oh, really?
Like, there's no real like Genki specific one there.
Oh yeah, no,
there's no one's like that.
No, I know. Yeah.
Positive.
Yeah.
Like
it's yeah.
But yeah, I would say that Kazuki, and in some ways this is maybe not just for the sake of being different, but this is something where if I looked at the show holistically, I don't know if I could call Michiru my favorite character.
Gotcha.
But it's weird because I'm like completely ignoring the main two characters, and yet they're so good because of what they do together. But I actually like them together more than
on their own
individually.
Sure,
they're more than the sum of their parts.
Yeah,
it really is true. Tsukasa is just kind of a good boy,
right?
Who desires to protect, and I've seen that a million times, and I like that. But Aira and her complexities, I would say, were kind of localized to specific parts of the show.
Because we see her struggle throughout, and and seeing the struggle was great. But the parts that I feel like really were awesome were the moments with, and we talked about this, but with Tsukasa and Aira, where she had overcome her struggle, and at that point,
where she was shown overtly dealing with the struggle,
and I feel like that was something where we were really able to get a good look into the kind of person that she was, and her own inner strength and fortitude and weaknesses and all that stuff.
Right.
Much more than before, and that's probably why it's more than the sum of their parts kind of a thing.
Yeah. But that's the show, y'all.
Yep.
Thank you so much for watching it through with us.
Okay.
This was the show that Jacob chose for the Tuesday slot.
Yep.
Going forward, I get to choose the Tuesday slot, and I chose a One Clear show that is a particularly different style of show.
Yep.
This is one that Jacob has seen. I have not.
I haven't seen it in so long, though.
I'm
so excited to rewatch it.
Yeah, this is Daily Lives of High School Boys.
Yeah.
It is a comedy. It is a show that I have very much wanted to see for a while now.
I
cannot wait to start it.
If you haven't seen this show before, you're in for a treat. It's so much fun. Like, it's
going to be a nice change of pace from Plastic
definitely.
Memories.
Yeah, very different.
And I've heard a lot of people like this show, but it wasn't really getting anywhere in the polls. So
no, it wasn't. It really wasn't.
That's what's going to happen on Tuesdays.
Oh boy!
From here on out. So if you want to see that first episode's reaction discussion, Daily Lives of High School Boys, go check out the link in the description below for our Patreon. You can get on early access there. You can watch full length timer reactions there, and all this comes with Discord access, so you can chat with us in the community there about this show, about anime in general, and you can also talk with Jacob about the sci-fi novel that he wrote.
Yep. I wrote a sci-fi novel. It's called Battle Lines. It's super awesome and cool and amazing, and you should definitely check it out. It's on Amazon. Link in the description down below in both hardback and ebook if you're within the U.S. Outside the U.S., just ebook. But check it out.
Yeah, so if any of that interests you, we'll see you there. But until then, we're Semblance of Sanity. I'm Caleb.
I'm Jacob.
And we'll see you all next time.